Hi, everyone. Welcome to Source Snack Break. I am Ren with Source. Today is Wednesday, June 17th. And before we get started, I'll tell you a couple things about this webinar tool you're on. You're all muted automatically, but you do have access to the live chat there on the right. So you can pop in your favorite emoji to try it out. And you can also use the live chat to ask any questions or comment, and we'll make sure we answer any questions that you have during the presentation. So bring it on. Jonathan, our presenter here today, is a great resource about all things wood and timber. So ask him as many questions as you'd like. We'll also send you a recording of the webinar after the presentation so you can save it for later or send it to a friend. Today's guest is Jonathan with Pioneer Millworks. Hey, Jonathan, how are you?
Good, Ren. Super. Thanks.
Super.
Thanks for having me on.
I know. We're so excited to have you back. Friends, you might remember that Jonathan was here a couple weeks ago talking about wood frame timber. So this time he's in his other role as Pioneer Millworks, and you're going to talk about using wood as an exterior siding, which I'm really excited about. And yes, we love your ceiling. We just had a tour of your house in your backyard digitally. So good. Sweet. So can you tell us a little bit about Pioneer Millworks? How long has this company been around? What's the deal?
And you know, I don't think there's a lot of people on, and so we can really make this as intimate as you guys want, as specific as you guys want. I am a total wood geek and a building science geek. I've been doing this for 30 some years, and I was telling somebody the other day, they said, "Oh, I'm a serial entrepreneur." I said, "No, I'm in a rut." I mean, this is about wood. My life is about wood. I develop new products for sure, but man, I am in the rut of wood. And you know, for me, one of the reasons why, of course, is it's gorgeous. That's easy and low-hanging fruit. It's flexible. Not as many people know that. But for me, my main thing is, and my main filter for all these 30 years has been environmental. I know that it seems like it's the hot topic of the day, but the truth is, it's been my hot topic for 30 years. New Energy Works, my other company, started as an energy-based company, and I started Pioneer Millworks maybe 25 years ago to support my timber framing habits, I like to say. You know, I was looking for particular wood with a story, with a stability, and with, you know, that environmental filter. I mean, trees are good. They grow. Low carbon footprint, I'm all about it. But reclaimed wood is even one step beyond that. So I'm good with any wood. I'm better with wood that comes from a certified source, like the Forest Stewardship Certification Program, Forest Stewardship Council, and I'm best with the reclaimed wood. And I may as well plug a book by a friend of mine, Bruce King. He's an amazing man down in the Bay Area and he wrote this book called The New Carbon Architecture.
Nice.
And in fact, later this year, he was going to come up, and he and I were going to do a presentation for Design Week Portland. But that's been canceled. And so we're just going to do our own webinar later this year. So if you follow us on, maybe reach out to Jonathan, Jonathan, at pioneermillworks.com. I'll make sure you get on the mailing list to see that webinar too later on.
Maybe we'll do another snack break.
Pardon?
Maybe we'll do another snack break. Talk about carbon and wood.
Oh, yeah. Well, carbon is where it's at. In this case, however, we're talking about Pioneer Millworks and wood siding. So for me, it's, you know, you've specifically, Ren, asked me to focus on exterior applications of wood.
Yeah.
And so for us, what we are a wood-based company. We do a lot of different kinds, and I like to break them up into three basic groups of the areas that we are used to working in. One of them is fresh sawn wood. In our case, we use larch, which is, oh yeah, thanks, Ren. So we use a product called, a wood called larch, which comes from Western, actually it comes from all over British Columbia. In our case, we get it from Eastern British Columbia. It's a fantastic wood. It's an underutilized species. It's reasonably rot resistant, takes a stain well, and perhaps more importantly, it's an underutilized species because not a lot of people know about it. So we worked hard with a local family-owned sawmill up there to develop a market for the larch. and we pre-finish it. So it's basically just wood siding, easy to install, easy to put a fire rating if you need it on, because I know a lot of you folks doing commercial work need to at least address the issue of fire rating. We do a lot of work in California, for instance, and you just don't go near the place without a fire rating. Up here in Portland, not as much. It's not as required. And in residential, it's never required.
Sweet.
But
Can
it's,
you
it's
talk
available.
a little bit about why larch is a great species and why maybe it's been ignored for a little while? Like, can you sort of talk about how it compares to other wood species a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, be glad to. What I like about how do you start? It's not the only one. There's a lot of good species that you can use. I've stayed away from cedar as a general rule because, again, sorry to be such a bore, but this environmental issue is important to me. And most of the cedar that's coming out right now is just simply not sustainably harvested. It's just not. And just not. How do I get, I hate to be that guy, but it's just a fact. And Ren, you're from a cedar forest up in the Tonga in Alaska. I used to, I've done a lot of work, used to own a sawmill in Canada, and I'm telling you, they're cutting down the cedar forests too quick.
Okay, so designers should look out for that when they're looking at the wood species, is how is it being harvested? So you're saying that larch is harvested in a more sustainable way, and so that's one of the reasons it's great.
Yes. So partly because, again, it's a nobody knows it. It's just one of those things. It's sort of under the radar, and it's sort of like ipe. Ipe is the known species, and so therefore it's over harvested. But there are other rainforest woods, if you need it in rainforest wood, which I don't think you do, but if you needed one, there are others that put less pressure on the forest. Larch is just one of those gorgeous, wonderful, underutilized species that by developing a market for it, we put less pressure on the cedar forest, less pressure on the Doug fir forest. That's all. It's just a small thing.
But it makes a difference.
We're not going to save the world, Ren, but this is just a small thing we do.
Yeah.
And it's gorgeous. And it's stunning. The logs that we get are often been standing dead in the forest for 10 to 20 years. They're 400 to 800-year-old logs. Wow. They don't have a market because large.
Yeah. Is it when you compare it to other species in terms of like hardness or color, what does it kind of like look and feel like in terms of where, like a comparable species or where you could put it?
Sure. So larch is one of the harder of the softwoods. It's about twice the hardness on the Jonka scale of cedar, for instance. And so it does take a beating really well. It's extraordinarily strong a wood. And so for that reason, when you come to siding, you don't have to have a particularly hard softwood, but this is a particularly hard softwood. So yeah, we use it a lot for that reason. I hate to sell it compared to others. I think there's a lot of good wood out there. I'm a wood guy.
Yeah.
But it takes a stain gorgeously. It's a much more mellow palette. The Doug fir, much as I love it, does have a bit of a salmony tone to it that when you add color to it can be problematic to get the color that the designer really wants. Mm-hmm. Whereas this is a more neutral beige, and so it's a little easier to do that. So that's an interesting question. Yeah.
Yeah. Can we talk really quickly about when it comes to sustainable forestry, it's not just that it creates a better sort of economy in terms of we're not destroying the environment, we're also, creating market. Does sustainable forestry also create better trees? Like, is the product better when it's harvested in a way that's more mindful? Does that question make sense?
Oh my God, it's like you're a plant or something.
Yeah.
So that is a lob. I mean, obviously and clearly, the ability of a good, healthy forest to rejuvenate itself, to supply product over and over again, is critical. I think I noticed here that
questions. Yes, we've got two here. I'll read them for you. Why would someone choose a wood siding versus another material other than aesthetics? Is there something?
It needs something other. Aren't we just a visual only a world? I mean, do you need another reason? It's gorgeous. But seriously, for me, the carbon footprint of the build process, those initial materials that you install in a home right now are critical for the health of our planet. I mean, I'm that guy, you know. It's that it used to be all about operational carbon footprint.
Mm-hmm.
What is the material or the heating or the cooling loads over the 100 years? I'm not actually convinced we have 100 years. I think today, the products, the buildings we do today have to be thought of as what are the products that are going into it. With wood, you've got something that will sequester carbon. It's beautiful at that. Its initial carbon input to grow a tree is the lowest of any building material there is. Nice. So, you know, for those reasons. But just to go a little bit further to Brittany's question, you know, it's also can be less expensive than some of the others because it goes up easier. And that's something people don't realize. You know, some of these, you know, in the residential world, hardy plank, which is a cementitious fiber reinforced concrete product, you know, it's made in Houston, it's shipped up here, it's a high carbon footprint product in the beginning. It's also a dickens to install. I mean, I was a carpenter, I still am, and, you know, to some extent, man, that stuff's a dickens. And so wood can go up faster. Not always, but can go up faster.
Nice. We have another question from John. How does larch compare to cedar in terms of weather and rot resistance?
Equally. So one of the things I always say is you take any wood and you put it in a puddle, it's going to get bad. You know, it's going to rot. It's going to have trouble. Siding is an interesting product in that it's not just about the wood. It's also about the detailing, you know, good water detailing. Portland has run into all sorts of problems over the last 4 decades because people forgot about rain and wetness and the ability to let the siding dry. So, you know, if you take care of water detailing, the wood will take care of itself. You know, I'm from the East years ago, and I can remember repairing some siding on an old colonial house. It was aspen. I mean, the wood was like, why was this wood even used on the exterior? It should never have been used on the exterior. But, you know, the fact is it was under an eave and it lasted 200 years. So, you know, again, it's all about how you install this stuff.
So can you talk about that a little bit? I love that I think we have a picture of you here installing some wood siding.
Yeah, that's actually, we donated a bunch of siding to a homeless encampment over on Powell outside of 205. And so that's me.
Installing.
Clearly, not having been much of a carpenter lately, I'm not holding the hammer as well as it should be. But
so when you say that the importance is the sort of rain detailing, what does that look like for designers? What should they keep in mind when it comes to drawing that detail to make sure that this wood stays not in a puddle?
Yeah. So luckily, what do they call them? Rain screens. Has been part of the code now for the last 4 years in Portland. Okay. I've been doing rain screens for 40 years. I like to say, call me old. 30 years. I'd like to say, call me old-fashioned, but I want my wood to dry. So you can see here, for instance, we put up strapping on that picture.
The vertical line.
Yeah, the vertical lines. And so what that does is it promotes airflow through the thing. We also back prime all of our wood just because, again, hard-driven rain, splashback from eaves, that can all actually get up into the wood, or any siding, by the way, but into this siding and wood. And so the ability for it to dry is just really great.
So it's kind of one of those things where sometimes I think we forget that sometimes it feels like we get really focused on keeping rain away from the siding, but we have to remember that it's okay for rain to touch the siding. It just needs to be able to leave. And that's what a rain screen does, right? It allows the water to leave the siding.
Yeah, and it does a little bit more than that. It also breaks the capillary action from the envelope itself. So
I love the word capillary action. Please explain.
You love it when I talk that way, right?
I love it.
So basically, all envelopes in any structure have issues with dew point and vapor drive and a certain amount of moisture content. That's just the way it is. So the idea is, how do we deal with that reality? And one way, of course, is to not, if you put the wood directly up against the envelope, then what can happen is wood, that just through the conductive process of moisture being either pulled in or pushed out, you don't have that ability to stop that moisture train from going one way or the other. So by, again, breaking that capillary action with a little bit of a rain screen, it does wonders. So not only does it allow the wood to dry, but it stops it from getting wet from the envelope itself. That's that capillary action I was talking about.
That makes sense. I love that. So what are some things that designers always ask about using wood as an exterior material? How does it compare to other exterior materials? Are there things to keep in mind other than the capillary action that we just discussed?
Yeah, so I like to, wood is a sort of, I hate to use this cliche, but kind of more of a living material. It's going to transfer. I mean, I was telling you about some of the different products we make and that are available by us or people like us. We break it down into fresh wood that has been pre-finished. We also use a certain amount of as-found wood that came from fencing or other weathered products. In those cases, I like to say it comes pre-finished with ultraviolet degradation. It really doesn't need any more. It's been there for 50 years, and that graying on the outside actually is a protective coat, which is kind of interesting.
That is great.
And then the third area, and which is what I'm getting to answer your question, we do a lot with Shou Sugi Ban, which is ancient, semi-ancient Japanese technique of burning wood. And we've created an oven out in McMinnville that has got a rolling floor on it with 200,000 BTUs of torch on it. And we burn the wood as it goes through. And we can burn it at different amounts. And we burn the back as well to a lesser extent. So what happens in those cases is, we're actually burning some of the carbon out of the wood to do a few things. One is it starves the bacteria that could happen in wood from feasting. So, it's a treating process. It's also originally designed and still works today as an as a flame retardant.
Because there's nothing for the flame to eat.
Less for the flame to eat. Nothing is never a word I like to use, but absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. The flame jumps to carbon and is like, this isn't fun, and goes and looks for something else.
Nice.
So, and that's a real thing. It really does work.
Yeah.
I've built homes for some firemen whose own homes burned, and they said, my next home is going to be timber and wood because that's the most predictable, best way if a fire is going to happen, I want it to be a wood fire. And that seems counterintuitive, but is real.
Because it's like the oldest fire in the book. That's you know what I mean? That's the original thing that we started lighting on fire was wood. And so how it performs in fire as opposed to something that has been treated with chemicals would be my.
And particularly in timbers and we do Shou Sugi Ban timbers too, where the timber chars on the outside, just like that siding we're talking about, starving the fire from fuel.
But remains structurally sound is my understanding.
Amazingly so.
It's really cool.
My favorite picture is a bunch of charred timbers in a wreckage of a building with a steel beam just twisted and a needle leaning right over them.
That's amazing. We have another question. They want to know, how large is the oven that you create this in?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like 8 inches tall and 2 foot wide and, 10 foot long.
It's like the biggest easy bake oven you've ever seen.
With a rolling floor on it. On our website under Shou Sugi Ban, I think somewhere there's a video of just on the inside. It doesn't have a whole lot of plot, but it's
awesome.
Got a lot of action. It's
I'll ask you one last question, and designers, if you have any more questions, chat them in right now as we're wrapping up here. But when it comes to finishing the wood, what should designers keep in mind when it comes to finishes when it's being used as an exterior cladding?
Yeah, so this is a picture of a Shou Sugi Ban project of ours burned. So that's a black. What to keep in mind? Talk to somebody who knows finishes. I mean, there's so much to know.
Just know when to look for help.
Know when to look for help. Look for, like, we like to back prime the part that you don't see. The finishes are so amazing today, and there are some that are quite green. That word green, some that are less harmful than others to the world, and remember too that there can be some that are multi-layered. We've done finishes with 6 different approaches, where maybe first we'll burn it, then we'll wire brush off the burn, and then we'll add a tone to it, and then we'll add a second tone to it. And some of that depth is really powerful. And of course, that all adds to the cost, but sometimes not as much as you think.
So what I'm hearing is reach out to your wood folks. Reach out to Jonathan, which you can do right now. If you'd like to order samples, you can do that immediately, immediate satisfaction, by clicking the order now button. Anything else we should know, Jonathan? This has been so helpful. What I'm learning is we should just always ask you with our wood questions.
Well, I am the geek. I'm not young, I've been doing this a long time, and I just live this thing. But wood is good, That's all you really got to know.
Yeah, it's the original gangster, right? Yeah. Great. Well, it was nice to see you again, Jonathan. Hopefully we'll do another one of these days, talk more about carbon and why wood is amazing. In the meantime, designers, if you want to register for another snack break, smash that register now button, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you so much, Jonathan. It was nice to see you again.
Thanks, and thanks you guys, and thank you for comments.
Heck yeah. We'll talk to you later. Okay. Bye.
See ya.